All right, so now we're going to talk about something that I understand is not everyone's favorite thing. I happen to be one of these people that loves grocery shopping. I get to make lots of decisions in a very short period of time. I get to pick out some delicious looking food. I'm really relaxed and not doing my work for once, right? And so for me, I really like grocery shopping. But for those of you out there for whom you think about this as really a chore that you dread, we're going to talk a little bit about how to make it a little bit more enjoyable. So, first of all, really think about the timing, right? So, if you can, I would say go during off hours. It's just going to be much less busy. There are going to be fewer people in your way, much less noise, less stressful, right? So, if you have the advantage of being a graduate or a professional student with some flexible hours, try going, if you can, during business hours. When you're not pressed for time, grocery shopping really is, again, much more enjoyable. You can take as long as you need. You're not worried about getting to that next meeting or getting home before the traffic is bad. So try, again, to go when you're not pressed for time, as hard as that sometimes can be. I say to go with a full stomach and an empty bladder, right? So if you're having any physiologic symptoms that really just make you want to get home as soon as possible, a full bladder being one of them, it's not going to make the grocery shopping experience super enjoyable. And I would say go with a full stomach, because if you're really, really hungry, everything you see is going to look good, and you might make some choices when purchasing some foods that you might not otherwise make. While you're grocery shopping, I say think about whether or not you want to listen to music. Some people definitely want to pop in the AirPods, listen to some music that they find enjoyable. I'll say I've given this a try a few times. It's not for me. Usually they're playing some music in the grocery store, and so in order to overcome that, I would have to blast music in my AirPods, and then I can't hear what's going on around me, or if someone's asking me a question, I'm not going to hear them. So really think for yourself whether or not you want to pop in those AirPods and listen to some music. But if that's for you, it can make the experience really, I think, much more enjoyable. I've also tried talking to friends or family members on the phone while I'm grocery shopping. Again, not for me. I'm like, wait, I'm distracted. I'm trying to pick out broccoli. I'll get back to you in a minute, right? But for other folks, this is a great time to kind of multitask and do something a little mindless, throwing things in their cart while they're catching up with someone they love. So think about doing that. Wear comfortable clothes. And so again, if you're just like stressing to get home because you're in this suit or kind of your professional wear from work, it's not going to make the experience enjoyable. You'll catch me only in shorts or sweats at the grocery store, frequently in sandals, and very rarely looking good. So wear some comfortable clothes. And I would say just kind of have the right mindset when you go, right? This is really a privilege to be able to select really good quality produce and to have all of these different options available to us, and really to think about where we live and how thankful we can be that sometimes we have the privilege of shopping in this way. And so going in with the right mindset can sometimes make it more enjoyable as well. And then afterwards, consider treating yourself. And so you see this Starbucks drink on the right that you've probably been wondering, what does this have to do with grocery shopping? So for me, sometimes I'm pairing a pleasurable experience with something that's much less pleasurable. Now, for me, I like grocery shopping, but if for you, grocery shopping is not very pleasurable, consider pairing it with a treat to make the whole experience nicer. So this is my favorite Starbucks drink on the right. And luckily for me, my grocery store and the Starbucks are super close together. So sometimes I'll stop by there afterwards to grab myself a sweet treat. So think about doing something like that. Now, let's transition over to think about how to buy healthy and time-saving ingredients. Because again, I know you're short on time, I'm short on time, my patients are short on time, everyone is short on time. So how can we find ingredients that both promote our health and save us time? My first tip is to buy fresh, pre-prepared ingredients. So you see some examples up here. I love eating pomegranate seeds. I can't stand getting them out of the pomegranate, right? So even though it's a little more expensive, I choose to buy them like this. You can buy vegetables that are already pre-cut or pre-washed, like these green beans you see here, which are already trimmed, and you can actually just pop that whole bag in the microwave. Or for the purposes of microplastics, I might suggest taking it out of the plastic bag, putting it in a glass container with a little bit of water, and heating it up with a lid. Butternut squash, delicious. Delicious to roast, delicious as part of a pasta sauce after you boil it right. Pretty difficult to cut. So if you're a bit of a novice with the knife, you might want to buy that pre-cut, save yourself some time. Zoodles, which you see in the upper right-hand corner there, delicious. Very low in carbohydrates and very low certainly in refined carbohydrates, right? Unlike pasta. Lots of fiber, pack your veggies and your antioxidants in. Just buy some zoodles, right? And then I will never be slicing cabbage to make a coleslaw. I will always be buying it kind of pre-sliced like this in the bag. So just a few ideas there to get you started as you're thinking about how you can buy some fresh, pre-prepared ingredients. Lots of fruit and veg here to save you time. But it's not just fresh, you can also buy frozen. I like to really empower people when it comes to frozen vegetables. These are just as healthy as fresh and often more healthy than fresh. And the reason for that is our fresh produce is generally picked long before it's ripe so that it can be shipped hundreds or even thousands of miles and make its way intact to the grocery store. Then when you pick it out, it might still not be ripe and you have to bring it home and let it ripen a little bit, right? The fact that it's picked so early means those, phytonutrients, those antioxidants, those helpful plant chemicals haven't reached their full potential yet, right? They're not as nutrient dense as something that's picked at the peak of ripeness. And when something is picked to be frozen, that's how it's picked. It's picked at the peak of ripeness and then flash frozen. So you see kind of some blends here that I think can save us a lot of time in the frozen veggie aisle, right? If you're making a stir fry, buy a stir fry blend. If you're making fajitas, you can buy peppers and onions pre-sliced, again, at the peak of ripeness, super nutrient dense, saves you lots of time with cutting, and it's probably going to save you some money too. If you're making a soup, you can buy soup vegetables, or if you're making most any soup or many sauces, you can buy a mirepoix, which is that blend of carrots, celery, and onions. Again, pre-cut, ready to go. So definitely rely on your frozen pre-cut ingredients. And then my third tip is to, again, buy canned ingredients. These frequently get a bad rap because of the sodium that's often in them, but you can always buy low or no sodium versions, or if you're buying something like these black beans, then you can just rinse off the extra sodium in a colander with some water, right? And I really rely, I would say, most frequently on canned beans. So buy lots of canned beans. Canned tomatoes are going to be better than fresh every time of year, except for when they're in season, right? So super delicious. Don't feel bad about those. Organic pumpkin is a great one to buy in the can, just not pumpkin pie filling, but organic pumpkin, right? It has one ingredient, pumpkin. Another one of my favorites is an evaporated milk, which you can buy in the can. I know we've talked about that before. You can buy this in the fat-free version. It's still super delicious and creamy and can take the place of some whole milk or sometimes some cream when you're cooking or baking. Artichoke hearts and other vegetables are delicious, and even lentils. Sometimes I don't have time to necessarily cook off my beans or my lentils, but again, buying them in the can can save you a lot of time and help you to get some plant-based protein into your diet. So definitely canned ingredients are okay. Now, we're sometimes going to want to buy some ultra-processed foods, and that's okay. It's never going to be the case that as a country and as a society, we go back to the days where we don't eat any ultra-processed foods. They are here to stay. And so our goal is to really make wise choices around choosing ultra-processed foods. And so to that end, I want to give us some tips about how to read food labels. When it comes to nutrition facts, there's a whole lot of information there, and so we'll start at the top and go to the bottom. When it comes to serving size, take note of that, right? It may be that you feel like that's a reasonable serving size. If I'm going to eat crackers, maybe 12 crackers is going to be reasonable if that's the serving size. Or I might say, there is no way I'm going to eat 12 crackers. I'm going to be eating 24 or 36, 2 or 3 servings. So take note of that serving size so that you can really get an idea for whether you're going to get the nutrients that are labeled on that package or if you're going to get like 2 to 3 times the nutrients that you see there on the nutrition facts label. Calories is important only for knowing your daily energy goal. Everyone's is different. It's based on your age, your sex, your daily activity level, and what you really want to do is figure out how many calories you need per day, and then that'll give you a sense of how much energy this food is really providing you compared to what you need. When it comes to fats, we really want to limit saturated fats. Saturated fats, as we've discussed, increase our LDL, our bad cholesterol, and increase our risk of things like heart attacks and strokes. Otherwise, fat, we kind of like unsaturated fats, which are poly or monounsaturated fats. We're not terribly concerned about that. We don't want to go way overboard, but it's really the saturated fats that we want to limit. Cholesterol. The reason I say to ignore this is that very, very little cholesterol that we eat is actually absorbed into our blood. Our liver makes its own cholesterol, and that's largely determined by how much fat and how much saturated fat we eat, not how much cholesterol we eat. So I think you can feel free, when you look at a nutrition facts label, to just ignore that. Sodium is a little different for everyone. Some folks might speak with their physician and they might suggest that they should go down to 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. For the rest of us, we're probably shooting for something around 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day or less. But the average American is getting a full gram more per day than that recommendation, something around 3,300 milligrams per day. And we could all probably improve our blood pressure and increase our lifespan if we were to pay a little more attention to the sodium that we're eating. So if we need to eat about 2,000 calories a day, that means for every calorie, we should be consuming roughly 1 milligram of sodium. So this is not a perfect rule, but I would say this is a nice heuristic for kind of gauging how much sodium does this have in it. Is it a high sodium food or is it more reasonable? So for instance, on this one you see here, the sodium in milligrams is going to be higher than the calories per serving. So this is a higher sodium food. Total carbs. Honestly, I ignore those two. I look at the breakdown of the carbohydrates, which includes sugar, fiber, and added sugars, right? So the total carbs, I ignore that. The dietary fiber passes through your intestines intact, right? You're not absorbing this into your bloodstream. That dietary fiber, very good for your gut microbiome, keeps you fuller longer. So the higher the better when it comes to fiber. Total sugars I also ignore because if these sugars are, for instance, coming from a whole piece of fruit, we don't really care about that, right? What we really care about are how many sugars are being added. So really pay attention to these added sugars. The recommendation currently is to minimize your added sugars and make them no more than 10% of your daily calories. But honestly, I think we all agree the fewer added sugars, the better. And then protein. You notice there's no percent daily allowance on the right side there on that nutrition facts for protein, and that's because everyone needs different amounts of protein. This is again based on your age, your sex, and your body weight, right? So take a look at how much protein you need, and then you can get a sense of how protein-rich the food is compared to your daily protein needs. So that's the nutrition facts list, but the ingredients list is also super important. And the reason I say that is that the order of ingredients matters, not just the list in general, right? So if we look at this Sunny D, right, something that I really loved in my childhood that my mom would very rarely buy, you can see that the first ingredient is not juice, right? It's water. And the last ingredient is what's going to be in the lowest proportion. It's gone from what's in the Sunny D in the largest concentration to the lowest concentration. That's how an ingredients list is kind of laid out there. So really this Sunny D is mostly water and sugar, and then later down on the list you see juice. So pay attention to the order of ingredients. The next thing to pay attention to in the ingredients list is whether we're eating a whole or a refined grain. And again, we've talked about the differences before, but when you're looking at an ingredients list, how do you tell the difference between a whole and a refined grain? So corn or cornmeal, that's a whole grain. Brown or wild rice, that's a whole grain. If it just says rice or if it says white rice, that's not a whole grain. Barley, that's going to be a whole grain if it says hulled barley. If it says pearled barley, not a whole grain. Oats, those are whole grains, you don't have to worry. And these other common whole grains you see here, bulgur, farro, millet, quinoa, those are all whole grains. If there's any other grain in the ingredients list, besides those, whole has to be the first word in order for it to be a whole grain. So something like wheat flour, that's a refined grain. Or if it's enriched or stone ground, right? These all sound like really good things, and they may be, but they are not whole grains, right? These are refined grains. Rye flour, again, rice like we mentioned above, these are all refined grains. So let me put up this delicious bread here, which is baked with love. It looks so wholesome, right? But if you look at the first ingredient, enriched flour, right? So this enriched flour is not a whole grain. If you keep going in the list and you get down lower, you see that after water, you have whole wheat flour. So there is some whole grains in this, but there's less whole grains than there is water, right? So again, this bread is going to be mostly refined grains. Okay, similarly, how do you identify sugars in an ingredients list? There's lots of names for sugar. One is, of course, sugar or invert sugar, but then there's a lot of other ones that are confusing that you might not realize are sugar. Dextrose, fructose, sucrose, things like this. Syrups of all kind, no matter where they come from. Molasses, honey, evaporated cane juice. That's a clever way, again, of just saying sugar. Fruit juice concentrate, right? And finally, barley malt, which you see in many, many ultra-processed foods. So again, if you're looking for evidence of sugar in an ingredients list, there's lots of different words that they can use to show that. So this is my favorite breakfast cereal, Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds. And it sounds pretty good, right? We have almonds, we have oats. We know there's going to be a little sugar, right? It's called Honey Bunches, right? But if you look at this ingredients lists here, we have sugar, we have molasses, we have honey, we have corn syrup, and we have barley malt extract. So that's 5 different sources of sugar just in this one ingredients list. So you can imagine how much sugar this has per serving, and perhaps not the healthiest choice when it comes to an ultra-processed food. But like I said, I love it. Okay, next, how do we identify starches? Now, the reason I bring up these starches, there's lots of different types of starches, but the ones that are generally added to ultra-processed foods are very simple starches. They are broken down extremely quickly, and basically your body treats them like sugar. So when we see some of these starches, we think about them nutritionally as just sugar. So these starches can come from lots of different places. They might also call it a modified starch or a dextrin or a maltodextrin, right? And they're everywhere. So take, for instance, these Doritos, right? We don't think of Doritos as being like a very sweet or necessarily starchy food, but your body is going to kind of treat them like that. And the reason for that, as you can see, is that there's maltodextrin, there's dextrose, there's lactose, and then there's straight up sugar, right? So 4 different sources of sugar and starch which the body is going to really treat like sugar in this snack that we might otherwise consider to be, pretty savory, actually. So keep an eye out for those starches. And then, of course, the real money here, how can we save a few bucks at the grocery store? So I'm going to give you a few strategies, and I'm sure you have some ideas of your own. But I would say, buy according to the unit price, right? So a lot of people are looking at the total cost of the item, and when you want to compare several different items, it can be difficult to do because you have to take, the number of fluid ounces and divide that into the total cost of the item and kind of compare it. It's quite difficult, right? So instead, most grocery stores will show a unit price, and you can compare those unit prices. So like the price per ounce or the price per gram, for instance. And so that can really help you make some savvy decisions. When it comes to staple ingredients, I am always buying generic or store brand. I feel no need to buy, for instance, name brand canned beans, right? Beans are beans, and so I'm not paying that extra money for that name brand. So when it comes to these generic staple ingredients, feel free to buy the store brand. When appropriate, buy in bulk. And what I mean by is when appropriate is if you eat enough of it to eat it before it goes bad, maybe it's appropriate to buy that in bulk. So for instance, my med school roommate ate so much peanut butter, would go through jars and jars and jars a week. That would be something that might have been appropriate for him to buy in bulk. But if you're not consuming that much peanut butter, if you buy it in bulk, the unit price is going to be less, but you're going to end up throwing it away, right? So it's not actually going to save you money. So think about where you can buy in bulk to save a few bucks. When you buy something in season, it's certainly going to taste better, but it's also going to be cheaper, right? So peaches, when it comes time for peach season in August, for instance, those peaches are definitely going to taste better, but they'll certainly be cheaper than other times of year as well. So whenever you can, try to buy in season. Of course, sale items can save you a lot of money, so look for sales. Buy those canned and frozen goods like we previously talked about. If you take animal proteins and swap those out for plant-based proteins, you're definitely going to save money. Animal-based proteins are some of the most expensive things that we buy in the store. This is probably not surprising when you think about it. But again, if you can swap those out for some beans, some lentils, some tofu, things like that, you'll certainly save some money. Use grocery store rewards programs if you're going to the same grocery store every week, right? And then think about using coupons. And what I mean by this is don't go through and look for coupons and be like, oh, I haven't had Oreos in a while and I see a coupon for that. Maybe let me buy some Oreos, right? No, look at what you're buying and see if you can find coupons that apply to those things anyway. Now, I know this sounds kind of silly, right? Oh yeah, like I'm just going to solve food and nutrition insecurity by clipping a few coupons. I always like to tell the story of, me growing up. My dad was a blue-collar worker, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and then I was one of 3 kids. And so we had a family of 5 on kind of this one income. And we never experienced food or nutrition insecurity, and there were lots of reasons for that. One of which was that my mom was extremely savvy with grocery store rewards programs and coupons. She would sit down every Tuesday night. She would take all of the newspaper flyers for all of the grocery stores. She would circle the things that she wanted to buy to feed us that week. She would find the coupons to go with those food ingredients, and then she would bring all of this to Walmart, where they would price match from all of these other grocery stores and take all of these coupons. And it took her a lot of work. I saw her do do it every Tuesday night. But then on Wednesday, when she did the grocery shopping, she was able to save enough money and to buy enough food to keep us all really happily fed throughout my childhood. And so again, it may sound silly, like, oh, just use coupons. But I've seen it really impact positively a family's nutrition because I was part of that family. And then finally, only buy what you need, right? And so it's really easy, especially if you go to the grocery store when you're hungry, to buy everything on the shelf, then you end up throwing it away. And food waste, of course, equals money wasted. So only buy what you need. Next, we're going to get cooking. And for that, we need to look at how to set up our kitchen.